Hey, I'm here with Coach Glenn. The first time I saw Coach Glenn train, I was at an open mat. And what do you weigh?
About 160,
160.
155, yeah.
I see him stand up with a black belt who's like 240, 6'3", takes him down, jumps on his back, chokes him out pretty quick. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool. I'm going to keep my eyes on this guy. So I was watching him, and I heard through the grapevines, you've only been training for 4 years.
Just over, yeah, now 4 years.
So kind of blows my mind. I've been training for 16 years. How does somebody who's only been training for over 4 years tap out black belts?
Most black belts aren't that good. The COVID changed a lot. Like, I started right before COVID. I think COVID opened up the opportunity for people to recognize that they can learn from Gordon Ryan, Craig Jones, all these guys who are pumping out like really high quality instructionals. You go back to your regular coach's class and you're like, this dude doesn't know what he's talking about, right? And I think a lot of coaches, they were too busy stressing about their business failing during COVID to go and do all of the extra research that a lot of their students were doing. And so to people who've trained a long time in the industry, like, my progression might look relatively fast and uncommon, but I think it's going to become more and more common. I think the idea of like 10-year black belts, I think that's dead in the water. I think people, when they come in, the resources of information that are out there, whether it's on YouTube for free, whether it's instructionals and that you pay for them, or going to these seminars, right? Like Craig Jones and Nicky Ryan, all these guys, they're super active in traveling the world and sharing the information. People flying out to go train with B Team and New Wave. I think the rate of progression in Jiu-Jitsu to get to like a really proficient level, to be able to beat most current black belts, I don't think that's going to be hard for a lot of people. When you look at the last ADCC, there's people there who were purple belts.
Yeah.
Who trained like 2-3 years, right? That's never happened ever. Like, not since the days of like Ryan Hall and stuff, and even then he was an anomaly.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to become more and more common. I think when we look at it, like when at least in England, when we used to have bicycles, we had like penny farthings with like the huge wheel on the front and the little wheel on the back, and you know, those were probably difficult and non-inconvenient, we'll say. Well, then we made it a bicycle, and now everyone rides bikes.
Sure.
And so I think we've just streamlined the process of progression. I think we're going to leave a lot of people who are already at the peak dead in the water unless they adapt, because there's people who are 2 to 4 years into the sport who are already making them look stupid. You look at guys like Joseph Chen, he's like a 20-year-old, 19-year-old, absolute phenom, 4 or 5 years into the sport. There's a British guy, Owen Jones. He's like, I think he's like a purple belt or something. He's like 3-4 years into the sport. I think he started a similar time to me. He won trials. He's in this year's ADCC.
Sure, yeah.
It's a big deal. And so the rate of progression, I think it's shocking people who've been in for a long time at how quick people can progress. But when you're not learning a lot of filler and stuff that just outright doesn't work,
Sure.
and you go straight to the source of like the highest level grapplers in the world and you do what they do, as soon as you start doing the simple things that work effectively and consistently, you're going to get to that level. And so I think that's what it is. You know, I've been very blessed and fortunate to train with a lot of high level grapplers, and I've also, you know, done my due diligence and my research and pushed myself to be consistent in my progression. But I think there's a lot of people who will be able to do what I've done, provided that they take a similar path with it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I think, you know, we talk about like the martial arts, and like so many people care about the martial part but not the art part. You want to expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, I hate all the tradition in Jiu-Jitsu, all the Brazilian stuff, right? The bowing and, oh, you line there because you've got 2 bits of tape on your belt and I've got 3, right?
How about os?
I don't mind that. I mean, it's like, I kind of say it ironically because it's funny, but it's like, I get that it's like, it's people like LARPing, like live action role playing as like martial artists. It's, you know, dude, you work in a bank, it's fine to come in and just do a thing that you enjoy, right? But most martial arts get a bad rep because of the fact that they're that way.
Yeah.
And then making jiu-jitsu that same way takes away from the things that make it different, meaning like jiu-jitsu is actually effective, can actually be utilized in a way that can keep you safe in an altercation, or, you know, you actually get to practice it. You don't just stand in like patterns and do that, or you do your Aikido against like no resistance, right? So there is a genuine realness to jiu-jitsu, and yet when we don't focus on the art form, we don't focus on the actual grappling, and we focus on all of the other bullshit, it takes away from the stuff that actually sort of changes people's lives, right? If you're training and you don't want to get injured because you want to keep training, then you're going to take better care of your diet. You're going to, if you want to come in and perform well on the day, you're going to make sure you're taking care of your sleep. You might lift weights just to rehab injuries and stuff like that. It can be a great facilitator for great habits, provided that you aren't focused on all of the stupid things, the lining people up and making grown men bow to you.
Yeah.
It's like, that's purely an arrogance thing. It's purely an egotistical thing. It doesn't need to be that. It could just be a bunch of dudes getting in the room. Are we good, guys? All right, we're going to cover this today. From pair up, let's go.
Yeah.
That's the end of it, right?
What other kind of bullshit do you think people waste their time on? Like belts, lineages?
Yeah, essentially that. Belts. I think belts are ridiculous. In judo, taekwondo, things like that, they make sense, right? They have a syllabus. Do these things, achieve this based on your ability to perform and practice these things. There's none of that in jiu-jitsu. It's all entirely subjective. It's just what your coach thinks of you as a person. And so what we end up seeing is people using it like a carrot to dangle it over people or to use it politically against them. The Gracie Barras in England and around the US, there's cases as severe as coaches sleeping with their students' wives just to be able to give them a belt, right? Like I know of gyms where that's happened in, and it's all like people will build an entire, refurbish the entire gym for them for like no pay, and then they'll get a blue belt for it, and they think that's like an equal trade. So you've done like $4,000 or $5,000 worth of work just to be given a belt, and it's only built on the belief that this is worth something.
Yeah.
It's worth nothing.
Yeah.
Right? It's
$16 on Amazon.
100%. Right? Yeah. That's about it. With postage. Right? But it's the skill that you want, right? If you tie a white belt on, but you're going in and you're smoking all the black belts, everyone else is going to be upset at the belt that you're wearing, and no one's really upset at the skill that you have.
Reflecting.
Yeah. But when we see most gyms just handing out belts for time and stuff like that, it stopped being a representation of skill a long time ago. If it was a representation of skill, there'd be no way, it'd be physically impossible for purple belts to be in ADCC finals. It'd be impossible, right? I wouldn't be able to go into an open mat after training 3-4 years and smoke black belts who are bigger and stronger than me if it had anything to do with what we say it means. You see so many people on Instagram and YouTube are coming out with their own ways. Well, it's different for everyone. A blue belt for him is different. It's like you're just admitting that it's all made up, that it means nothing. It's essentially a thing that we do to make the person I'm giving a belt to like me more. Like, oh, there you go. It's like, thanks, coach. And
it's kind of why I like no-gi, right? Like you just walk in and there's a bunch of different skill levels and you just roll and you don't judge based on like what they're wearing. You just go.
What belt's he? Go find out. Go find out.
I'm a white rash guard.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, dude, what belt are you? It's like, does that matter? Does that matter?
Yeah.
Does that matter?
Yeah. Actually, I like that video. You put that guy in a heel hook and you're like, what belt are you? A blue belt? All right, cool.
Yeah.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, but again, it's like, the funny thing is I've found with like my students is because they know I think belts are stupid and meaningless, it actually means more to them when they get a belt from me because I'm like identifying, hey, no, dude, I think it actually matters. Yeah, it actually matters. Whereas the people who think it matters,
only care about the belt.
Yeah, they think like the belt's super important. They treat it in a way where it doesn't matter. Yeah. Right? I had a student recently ring me from his seminar and saying everyone else got a stripe but him. Right? And it felt like a personal attack. And I said to him, I was like, this is why I don't like it. Right? Because all intents and purposes, you train harder than everyone else, you're more skilled than everyone else on that mat, and they all got stripes. Even the people who weren't coming to class got promoted.
Sure.
He didn't. And it was a political thing.
Sure.
Right? To attack him, to make him feel bad. And it's like, that's when they tell you they mean something, they use it in that way.
Yeah.
I'll never use a belt in that, because I don't think they matter. I'm never going to hold it over your head just to hurt your feelings. I'm going to tell you it doesn't matter, get over it. So, which is what I said to him. I was like, don't worry, it's a piece of tape, dude. Get it. Be okay.
I think it's kind of sad is like, the belts and stripes should mean something. Like if you're a 4-stripe blue belt, you should technically be better than a 1-stripe blue belt. But then there's all this like weird jiu-jitsu math, right? Weight, size, power, age. Oh, I'm sore, I'm tired. Like the technique should still like present itself, right?
Yeah, are you good or you're not good?
Yeah.
How good are you?
Yeah.
Right? And if the belt doesn't summarize that, get rid of it. It doesn't matter. Right? And that is why I prefer no-gi, because, I'll give you it just as like a personal like accomplishment, but it's more just like if you're a competitor.
Sure.
This is
you want
why
to be
you
in the right cohort.
Yeah. You want to have the right opponents, right? You can go in a white belt and just smoke everyone. It's like, all right,
gold medal.
Cool,
Awesome.
cool, bro. You went and beat beginners.
Smartest third year.
Yeah, right. So it's like that. It means something in that sense. Like if I have guys who want to compete, and I'm not going to not promote them because I think it's stupid. It's like, all right, no, you want to be going against people at like maybe this skill set, and so. But I think the way that like NAG Air and ADCC do their tournaments where you have beginner, intermediate, advanced, I think that's fine. You look at boxing in England, at the very least, vastly more popular than Jiu-Jitsu. There's no rank system.
Sure. Yeah.
It's amateur and pro.
Yeah.
How good is that guy? Oh, he's good.
The record speaks for itself.
That's it. And I think we don't need these external value systems in order to like encourage people to get good. The only reason we need those is if your jiu-jitsu in your gym is so bad that the learning isn't so consistent that they need to have these things dangling them along the way just to feel like there's something worth investing the time in, Whereas if they're getting better each and every week, they're not going to care about the belt. Everyone I know who's made really fast progress doesn't care about it. They're not doing it because they want a belt. They're doing it because they
like growth and progress.
Yeah, they like getting better at, like they like being sick at jits, right? Like they like going into an open mat and being like, yeah, I'm gonna smoke everyone a day.
Yeah.
And like, being a blue belt when you're smoking black belts, it's like the best feeling ever.
Yeah.
Because the black belts are upset, not because you're better than them, but because you're a blue belt.
Oh, sure.
Right? It's like, oh, he's a blue belt. Oh, he should be a purple belt. It's like,
Should be.
I should be a purple belt. I just smoked you, bro, and you've trained 15 years and you're a black belt. Should I not be a black belt?
Yeah.
Oh, well, no, you haven't trained long enough. Well, apparently neither of you. You're going to need another 10 to catch up to me, dude. You know what I mean? I've even seen school systems where you have like a check-in. And if it's like after like 32 classes, you are now eligible for a stripe. But it doesn't matter what you put. You can just show up and like sleep for class. Like you just showing up is not enough, right? So. Well, that was my last gym, right? They were asking people to sign in. And one of the incentives for registering yourself for your class and signing in was that it goes towards your grading. Right? If we see you've attended X amount of classes, come to the grading. All right, he's attended 50 classes over the past 6 months. There's 2 stripes. Or you've only done 30, so it's 1 stripe. Right? Oh, you've done 80 classes since the last grading you came into. Well, that's a belt.
Yeah.
Dude, how good is he?
Yeah.
How good is he?
Can you actually pull it off?
Yeah. Right. Like one of my brand new white belts has just smoked him. Right. Or my newer white belts, they're smoking some of the coaches.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? Right? What does that mean? Like what are we doing? Are we pretending that just because we have used this system for the longest time, even though we're showing that it makes no sense and it's an ineffective way to look at progression in jiu-jitsu, we have to look at this as a unique sport. Wrestling, there's no grading system. It's closer to wrestling than it is judo. So why don't we just acknowledge that it's a business, it's a marketing scheme?
100% is business. There's paid gradings, which drives me bonkers. Like sometimes it's like $15 a stripe. Like a roll of tape is $3. Like it's great. That's a good business, man. But people need that validation, right? Children need that validation. I think it's different.
I think we assume so. I think we assume so, but kids love wrestling more than they love jiu-jitsu. It's a way bigger sport, especially in North America.
I can see it.
They don't get. It's just how good are you? Are you getting schooled or are you not getting schooled? The good kids are good because they want to be the best in the class, not because there's a belt. If anything, I kind of feel like the belt system in jiu-jitsu, it makes kids a little bit lazy, or it makes them feel a little bit entitled because they're walking around because they've got a different belt on. It's like,
and then a new kid beats them up, they're like, oh, the belt doesn't matter.
or it does the opposite, right? You think you're a gray belt, or you think you should be better than someone because you've been given this belt, and you get some kid who's just an athlete or a bit of a phenom, and he's a white belt and he's losing, and it's like, well, he shouldn't be able to beat me because he's a white belt, and it's like, yeah, none of that matters, dude.
How it works.
I'm trying to explain that to an 8-year-old who's been sold on the fact that he's been given this belt because he's better than others. Creates what we call vertical relationships. Like there's no like horizontal. It's not like we're all the same. We all belong we all belong on the mats together. We're all training partners. It's oh, he's below me. No, you have to stand there. You see the kids.
I can see that.
Like a kid will just like he's a white belt. It's his first day, and he just stands somewhere. And they're like no, and they're like forcing him.
People.
Right at the end of the mat, and it's like they think it's like this sign of respect and discipline, but it's like, oh, dude, it's like a sign of disrespect. Like, no, you at the bottom, right? Back of the bus for you.
It's brutal.
I don't like it. I really don't like it.
I think for me, it's easy when you have like a lot of kids in class to be able to look at a 3-stripe white belt and put him with a brand new kid because he should know the information to teach it, right? So I think the size of the class definitely helps. But yeah, I think progress is the big one. Can you expand a little bit more on you're seeing all these people like exploding in growth, 3-4 years, they're tapping out black belts. Do you think there's a common theme attribute that like an average person can just like absorb into their lifestyle to like make them progress faster?
Yeah. You
Without
have to,
steroids.
I mean, that's
doesn't help.
It's it's part and parcel of it, anything, right? No, it's even all right. So it's a common joke, but even if you're willing to take steroids to make progression, there's a reason you're doing it. It's because you want to get better, right? Now, does it mean that just taking steroids and not doing any of the other work is going to help? No.
It's recovery, like yeah.
Yeah, and so if you want to enhance your recovery, there's a high likelihood that you're training more than everyone else, right? And so people like to blame it on the steroids, but it's like, Gordon Ryan trains a lot, dude. Is he on an obscene amount of juice? Yeah, but he also trains way more than anyone else, and he's, and he talks about something where it's not just the physical work. That's the easy bit. People, even though it feels like hard work, it feels like physical effort, and we assume that's what hard work means. It's the mental stuff, right? He has a really good conceptual understanding of pretty much everything that he does, right? If you watch his instructionals, you're like, all right, this guy's a bit of a douchebag, but he knows what he's talking about, right? And so that's it, right? It's just you have to want to get better. You can't. One of the most frustrating things for me is like this idea of like, hey, just turn up. It's like, what are you talking about? You've just turned up for 12 years and someone gave you a black belt and you still feel like a blue belt, because you are the wrong person to be giving people advice, because your advice didn't get you to where someone can get to, where you got to in 12 years, someone got ahead of you in 2, right? Because of the way that you approach your training. You're the worst person to give people advice, right? You should just shut up and listen to the people who are, or watch these kids who are, they're young, they're athletic. No, dude, they're good at the sport. They're technical, dude, right? Like, trained with the Rutolos quite a lot. They've trained a long time, but they're coming up against guys like Joseph Chen, who's given, they're beating them, but they're giving them good scraps. Joseph Chen's like 4 years in. But what did he do? He researches all the time, right? He lifts weights. He takes care, he's a young kid, so he doesn't really have to take care of his diet, but he probably eats more protein than your average person, right? But the most important thing is that he wants to get good, right? He turned up, he enjoyed Jiu-Jitsu, and he thought, all right, I'm gonna put effort into getting good at this. And I think the consistent thing I've seen for everyone who's made quick progress is just that they wanted to make quick progress, or they wanted to get better faster. There's a weird like paradox is like, there's people who don't like losing and they play like losers because they're just like hyper defensive and play super tight, and they'll learn a couple of things that help them win, and then they'll just learn how to shut things down, and they just play that way. So not liking losing isn't good enough. You have to like winning. You have to like that feeling of being able to beat the other guy. Right? You have to be aggressive and offensive, because you're looking for options. You're looking not just to how, like, not to lose, but how to get back in the fight the entire game. I think that's a consistent thing as well, is you have to want it, and you have to be the person who's winning, not the person who's not losing. It's a different mindset.
That's really good. I think for me, I play like such a defensive, passive game, and if I lose, I'm like, I was working my defense, but it's pretty satisfying to end the fight, like very obviously, like they had no chance of escaping. So that's a good mindset shift for me. I like that. So you're talking about people who want to get good. They like really want to get good. I remember you talking about the other 22 hours, because most people train 2-3 times a week, maybe.
If that, yeah. So for the guys who I coach online, a lot of my athletes, I explain to them something called the 22-hour rule. I love this. Is turning up for your training and doing the training like for the hour, 2 hours that you're there. That's the easy bit of your day, right? It's the habits that you have in the other 22 hours, right? Like making sure you're getting your 8 hours of sleep, making sure that you're fed before you train, right? I like to train fasted. Like, shut up, dude. You need the glycogen, right? Otherwise, you're going to make bad decisions and you're going to get injured. Yeah. You're going to get injured and skin infections. Eat some food, dude. And then having your recovery meal, and then, if you need to have a nap or whatever the rest of your day looks like, but making sure that your habits all align so that when you turn up for training, you're 100%, or you're as close to 100% as possible for that 2 hour period, right? The 2 hour period, the progress is going to be maximized in everything you do outside of that training session. If your habits are just total dog shit, that 2 hour period is not going to be the same as someone who's nailed it. Right? And if someone's putting all of the effort into that, this becomes a seamless progression, a seamless development in the sport. But if you're not putting any effort into that, you have to put all of your effort into your training, and it generally doesn't give the same result.
Beautiful. I like that. Tell me a little bit more about the mental side. So I think for me, what really helps is like watching my own footage. I kind of forget what happens in a roll, so I like to go back and see. But instructionals, what other kind of things you recommend?
Yeah, so I think most gyms should kind of be like what weightlifting gyms are like now. There's just tripods everywhere, right? Not just for people sharing it on their social media, but just for like what you said, being able to identify the common mistakes that you're making. So when I'm reviewing my students' footage, I'm not looking, I say like, don't send me anything where you're doing well, right? Because you're doing it right? Okay. But just send me it and we'll look at the common mistakes that you're making. So rather than criticizing the whole thing, which ended up being like a 40-minute video, a 5-minute roll, I might watch like 3 rolls back to back. And if I can identify 1 to 3 consistent issues that they're making, like across different skill levels, it's like, this is where we need to work. Having someone else identify your mistakes, whether they've made a similar mistake and they have a path forward, or they just say, you don't want to be playing like that, you want to be playing like this, and then you go and reassess your game and try again, film it, watch the difference. That's really important. I think knowing where you're at in terms of your own skill level and researching where is most relevant for you. So watching instructionals that you think are going to be most relevant, or diving into knowledge, or just, whether it's hiring a coach or doing privates or whatever it is, like getting the information that's most relevant to you so that when you come into training, you have new games and systems that you want to apply.
Right.
I think in terms of feedback, like most people should be their own coach. Most people it shouldn't be a surprise when I say to someone like, your back escapes need work.
Oh, thanks. I didn't notice.
Yeah.
Like,
you're like, did you get choked
duh.
out? Yeah. Right. Like when, we did a class the other day, we lined everyone up and it's like, where do you struggle? It's like, no, we all struggle somewhere, right? Like always, at least the way I explain it to my online students is you have somewhere where you're best. You're really proficient here, and you have somewhere where you're worst. Right? And so you want the gap between where you're best and where you're worst to be as narrow as possible. So if you have this you could be a black belt at like so many different aspects of the game. And this is common, but like, let's say leg locks. I don't really know leg locks. Well, you're a white belt at leg locks. That means if you have a white belt who has even like a blue belt proficiency at leg locks, you're going to lose to that white belt.
Yeah. I think Nicky Rhino is a good example of that, right?
100%.
Just destroying people.
And so you want that gap to be narrow.
Yeah.
Because your skills as a grappler aren't based purely on where you're best. It's how well-rounded you are. And having that narrow gap between where you're worst and where you're best is being a well-rounded grappler.
So you definitely say that people who are getting good are like self-reflective. They're like observing their game. They're like, oh, I suck here. I got to work on it, right?
Yeah, more critical, more willing to listen to criticism. Being able to go like, yeah, no, I suck here. And it not being like a self-personal attack, but just being an observation.
Yeah.
It's really easy to start beating yourself up like, oh, I just suck at getting out of side control. And it's like, why are you making yourself feel bad about that? Go and practice getting out of side control, right? Like, it's a real simple solution. I think one of the reasons we see a lot of people who are like autistic or on the spectrum do well in the sport is they don't build as many emotional attachments to things like say, oh, my coach taught me this position. It's like, well, is it working? Well, on white belts, it's like, it's like, well, then let go of it, right? It sucks. Yeah, your coach sucks, right? Like it's fine. I think when, I played butterfly guard for like 2.5 years before I had someone point out like a real simple weakness to it. All right, well, we'll play less of that then.
Sure, yeah.
Right? I didn't have like this emotional like, oh, well, I like it.
I can see it. People get frustrated. They're attached to it emotionally and they can't let it go.
It seems like normies are more emotionally immature than actual disabled people, right? And so people with actual disabilities. But I think part of the reason we see people who are autistic do well in the sport is they can be a little bit more mechanical and a little bit more like structured about it. They go, well, all right, this guy showed me this, seems more effective than the way I previously did it. I'll do it this way.
Yeah.
Like that's the end of it. I think being willing to not get your feelings caught up in your progression. God, I'm not very good at getting out of side control. Like that's what like regular people do. Like autistic people, like, I'm not good at getting out of side control. I'm going to practice it for like 5 hours straight until I feel good at it. Yeah, and then they get it, and then it's like, oh, all right, but now my mount escapes need work. And I think it's easier to just self-identify and make progressions on it, depending on the kind of autism that you have.
It's interesting hearing you say like you should be your own coach. I remember part of the old organization I was with, back in the day, they frowned down on YouTube. They're like, oh, YouTube, don't YouTube. Like, that's not where it is. And I swear, like 3 years later, they created their own YouTube channel. Like, they're like, hey, if you're going to get YouTube, like, get it from us. And I was like, something feels insincere here, right?
Well, so funnily enough, it's funny you say that, is, you know who Eli Knight is?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's a great dude. I met him when I trained in Costa Rica. Yeah. And it was actually a BMAX seminar, and I was looking around, and I was like, that looks like Eli Knight, but he'd shaved his head. I didn't quite recognize him. I was like, that looks like Eli Knight. We're going around in a circle, and everyone's introducing themselves, and he's like, yeah, my name's Eli, I've been a black, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's Eli Knight. And it was funny to go up to, because I got my blue belt in like 6 months during COVID. And it was just because I was watching, you know, him and Chewy, who, you know, I know as well now, and all these other guys who put all their stuff on YouTube. And I saw, when I met Eli, I was like, dude, you know what it is? Like, I actually got my blue belt because of guys like you just putting content out there, so that when I went back to the gym and it opened up, I was just levels ahead of people just because I was absorbing information. So you can be consuming Gordon Ryan's content or Craig Jones's content, and it is going to be really beneficial, but even if you're just going on YouTube and it was taking in the free content from guys like Eli or Chewy or BMAC or Ken Peters is another guy, good guy, Canadian guy. You can just be or Jordan, you know. You can be taking all this stuff in just off YouTube, and it will make a huge difference to your game purely on the fact that you're doing research that 90% of the people in your gym aren't going to be doing.
Sure. Yeah, your coach isn't going to have all the answers, right?
No.
I think it was really cool talking to you yesterday. It's like, I remember you had like a skateboarding background, and in my mind, I was like, oh, you must have lots of attributes for balance and movement and speed. And you're like, no, actually, like skateboarders, they train differently.
Yeah.
There are no like skateboarding coaches. I mean, there must be now.
Yeah.
But back in the day, you have to be like self-reflective. Like, can you expand a little bit more about that? Like, persistence, I guess, was the big one.
Yeah, persistence is the big one, right? Like, you have to find something that is going to like challenge you, right? And so like when you're right at the beginning of your skateboarding, like ollieing up a curb might be like as much as you can manage, and you might spend an hour figuring that out. You haven't got anyone there like really telling you like how it should be done, unless like there's a kid who's better. He might give you a bit of advice, but you still have to go and figure it out. You have to go and figure out where to put your foot as it's happening, right? And then you have to really persist, and it's going to be frustrating, but you have to want to do it. You have to want to get to that end point. Like, skateboarding isn't for people who give up things easily.
Sure.
Right? You have to know that it's going to suck.
The gritty. Yeah.
And you land it once, and it's the best feeling ever. The stoke, you're like, oh my God, I ollied up a curb. Right? And then you get to a point, like maybe 6 months later, where you're just skating everywhere, and you're olling up curbs just to get around.
Basic,
to get around. But it's that feeling of consistent progression that you're always just putting yourself in what they call the zone of proximal development. Meaning that it's challenging enough to keep you engaged in it, but it's not so challenging that it's only frustrating and you're never going to succeed. And it's not challenging enough that you're just going to find so much success of it that it becomes mundane and boring. It's being in that zone of proximal development so that you're constantly finding it just the right amount of challenging. And I think as a skateboarder, you look for those things, and I didn't ever have anyone telling me what I should be learning next. Like, oh, you've got these tricks down.
Now it's next in the syllabus.
Exactly right.
Want your yellow belt in skating?
Exactly right. Yeah, something like that. Maybe an orange, right? But no, you have to look at it. You have to like look at your environment, look at the guys who you're skating with, and you have to be able to take in like, oh, that guy's doing hard flips. They look sick.
Yeah.
Right? And you can go and ask him, and he can go and show you how he does a hard flip, and he might show you once or twice, and you're like, and he gives you a few details. Then you have to go and spend 2 hours in a parking lot trying to do hard flips until you figure it out.
Yeah.
And there's going to be things that just don't make sense until you start to feel how it's supposed to be. I think having that from like a young age and recognizing that's how you learn things, or having the ability to just like persist through difficult things. The jiu-jitsu is not that hard. All right? Like I watched something on my Instagram the other day. This kid comes into a quarter pipe, does a backflip, lands on a blunt, and then flips out. And it's like, he's like 10 years old.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, we have to teach the kids the bad jiu-jitsu because they can't handle the complex things. It's like, dude, that kid just did a backflip to a blunt and kick flipped out.
They might be more capable than
us. I think we're just doing bad jiu-jitsu boring, and kids aren't finding it interesting. Yeah. They're not engaged, not because it's too difficult, but because you're boring.
5-step thing. They're like, oh, they're checked out. Most of them have ADHD. They're like looking around.
Just let them scrap for an hour and then just correct the things that need correcting, the safety issues and whatever else. If they don't play with something naturally, it might be that it's not effective.
I think it really, when you have to be your own coach, it takes like a special type of environment, I think, to do that. I think for me, for a while, a lot of my students would send me footage and like, hey, can you help me with this roll? And it's like a 5-minute roll. I don't want to watch the whole thing. So I'd be like, can you tell me a specific part? Like if 20 people send this, it takes too long. And then I would start giving them feedback on it. And then I realized this is not really practical for me to give one-to-one advice.
Yeah.
So I started getting a little bit of groupthink, is get them to post that clip in their group chat. So everybody gets an idea to analyze it. And like, it just makes everybody like way more creative, way more like in tune and paying attention. And if you solve a little problem for somebody, it probably helps like a whole bunch of other people too.
Yeah.
Right. So trying to really foster that environment.
Well, it's funny you say environment, because that's entirely it, right? At least the way my classes worked is I'm going to create a framework of the lesson. But if you've identified an issue that is persistent in your game and it's not getting any better, rather than you waiting until I'm going to teach a class.
Yeah. That's in October.
That's in October, yeah. And it's like, well, dude, it's June, right? Like, I'm just going to suck ass for 4 months until, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you've identified something and you have potential solutions that you'd like to put into practice so that you can actually get better at the thing that you feel like is your big hole at the moment, and you come into the lesson and you approach me and you know, oh, Glenn, you know, I know you're teaching turtle escapes today, but you know, I keep getting DOSed, and I've been looking at these DOS escapes and I really want to try it. And you know, I've spoke to such and such, and they've said they want to train with me today and practice them because they get DOSed as well. I said, okay, if we go in the corner and practice it, it's like, yeah, dude. Yeah. Like you're coming up to me, identifying your own problems and saying that you have solutions that you want to try.
It's accountability. That's
dude.
beautiful.
Yeah, you're paying like what, best part of $200 a month to train here. Like you're just renting the mat space. I'm just here to help out with whatever it is you need, right? I should be good enough as a coach that if you want to go and practice your DOSes in the corner, that I should be able to come over and give you insight whether or not I've prepared it that day. You know, and I think having the humility to recognize it's not about you, right? It's got nothing to do with me, right? You're an adult, you're paying to be here. I'm here to just help you out. So I'm going to create I'm going to try and cast a wider net as possible.
For sure.
So to make sure I can teach as many people as many things as possible. Even if you were going to learn something in my lesson, it's going to be nowhere near as effective as the things you've self-identified.
Your interest, your dopamine hit is going to be so much more powerful.
Yeah. So take that and go and do it, right? And it means that if I create games and you come in and you're like, oh, actually this game does sound fun.
Yeah.
Then you're choosing it over your own like
interest.
Yeah. But the same thing, your dopamine hit's going to be, you go, oh, actually, no, this might be better for me. This might be better for me. And if it's not, that feeling of like having your coach go, dude, look, like, can you imagine if you went to the weightlifting gym and you go in and you're like, oh, I want to go do my chest today. I'm like, no, today's back. You're like, no, but I wanted to train my chest. Yeah. Like, no, it's back today. And you're like, it's dumb, right? It's so dumb. And so if people are coming in and they have things that they want to do, you know, it's pretty much one of the things I did for like the whole, like my jiu-jitsu is I go to class, and if I just didn't have any interest in what the coach was showing, I was just going to grab someone and go do my own fucking thing, because it was relevant to me. And it might upset the coach's feelings, whatever.
Yeah, I've definitely seen it.
Yeah. It's like, oh, well, that's not what I showed.
It's like the attention, like it's hard to get that. Other people looking over, like, what are these guys working on? Like,
yeah, but it's like you need to have the humility to be like, that's fine. Right? It's not about me. I'm not the star of the show. I'm just the source of information.
Sure.
Right? I should be able to spin all of these plates. If these guys are working on some mount escapes and they have one, it's like, all right, guys, so you're kind of searching in the wrong area. I'd be thinking more along these lines, and you go over and, you know, this guy's getting caught in arm bars or whatever it is. It's like, all right, well, you know, how vast, how much of a generalist are you? And I think as a coach, if you're a specialist, if you only play one way, bad coach, can't do it. You need to be like a generalist, right? Unless specialists will go and teach seminars and they'll do great in seminars. But to be like coaching a gym and be on top of different people all the time, you need to be able to have a wide array of like knowledge as possible so that you can help as many people in that lesson as possible, rather than getting everyone to narrow in on the same subject. If people have things they're identifying, just like let them train, let them get better, and they will get way better.
Would you see it's valuable then to keep people's attention is to like create times on the schedule for people to like experiment stuff? So sometimes it's like guided, sometimes it's more open. So it doesn't have to be an open mat, because that's just rolling, right?
Yeah. So BMAC, who I'm going to be going down to train with in Alabama, his sessions are planned out like an hour training, and then the mat's open for an hour immediately after. So if you don't want to do the training, but you still want to go and get rounds in or drill your own stuff, there is a time allotted for you to be able to do that right after.
Yeah.
I think more gyms doing that would see a huge like progression in their students' skill level, just because you're treating them like adults and you're giving them an option. Like, all right, we're going to have a lesson plan for the people who feel like they need a lesson plan, and then once, like, by the time people get to blue belt, you want to be encouraging them to kind of be like, searching in their own
Sure.
in their own sort of ways. If people need a good foundation, that's what the white belt's for, right? Let's build the foundation. Things that, how many white belts have wasted time learning like things that they're just never going to hit on anyone because they don't even understand like,
Context of like the situation.
yeah. And so I think most lesson plans should be built with like beginners in mind, and maybe only have like 2 or 3 of those a week, and then everything else be way more open form and let people come in and play. And even still, like white belts will surprise you if you just give them a game. Like we did it the other day, right? Yeah. It's just like you give them little. All right, guys, we're searching in this area and we're not finding success. And instead of being here, let's have a look over here. Let's see how this feels. And when you start watching people figure it out for themselves, they don't have like the same dopamine hit of like, oh, I got the move right and coach saw. It's, oh, dude, I did it. I got to the end and I figured it out for myself. And then coach congratulated me for being like,
you got it.
Figured it out. Yeah, dude. And then he pulls me up and goes, right, Justin did this. It's one of my favorite. I get to teach you the technique now because someone hit it. Not because I'm the star and I know all these cool things. Someone figured it out for themselves. This is one of my favorite things to do. And you demonstrate it off the back of your students, like demonstrating the concept first. I think that's really helpful.
I was even thinking about like when the Gracies started, like they got a little bit of information from the Japanese and then the rest of it they created on their own. They had no book, they had no source. So it's interesting, like now that these people are in these like strong positions, they want them to get their resources and information, and it's great business, but it doesn't mean like people are going to progress as well, right?
It's a weird sport, right? It is strange. The more I look at the culture and the tradition of Jiu-Jitsu, I'm like, this is actually really strange. Why do I do this? But I do it because I'm good.
It's fun too.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to be good. When people say like, oh, this is so much fun. I'm like, wait until you get good. Like wait until you just go into an open mat and you're just like, oh, everyone's getting smoked today. And people being like, oh, I caught 2 subs today. Great, got 20, right? Like, but the getting good at anything is the fun, because it means like you have a greater ability to have a creative output in terms of like at least the context of Jiu-Jitsu. All of those other things I feel like stifle creativity. And if you can't be creative, if someone gives you the tools, and they're like, it's like, here's a marble, here's the tools, but you're going to do it exactly this way. Right? It becomes a chore. But it's like, all right, here's the marble, here's the tools. This is essentially what I want you to create, but do it your way.
Your own style.
Like you take your time, do it your way, like play with it the way that you want to play with it. Let it be art and not martial, like you said before. And people resonate. I feel like people resonate with that a bit more, because it means that they're coming in, and rather than it being like this another structured, rigid thing to add to their day of like 10-hour shifts and getting the kids to school on time and like lunch at this time and being back, it means that they get to come in and actually have like a bit of an outlet, a bit of an expression. And I think it makes them want to be there. So like you say, people coming in 2-3 times a week, all of a sudden they're in 5-6 times a week. And it's not because they want to train hard and they're disciplined, but because, dude, I love being here.
They have to turn their brain off. And it's funny, as you were describing it, I thought you were talking about kids, but you're talking about adults. It's like I teach kids that too, right? Is allowing them to like be creative, and man, they create some crazy cool stuff. Or like I never would have figured that out by myself.
No.
And when you recognize them for it, you just see the beam, right? They're like, I did it, right? It's a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, for sure.
I think you already do it like ecologically, right?
Yeah.
So can you expand a little bit? I think it's like new for a lot of people. Can you make it like simple and concise so that people see the difference between current way versus eco and the benefits of it?
So the more traditional way of doing it is a system called IP, which stands for information processing. Is that I am the source of the information. I'll give you the information. You'll go and practice it, and that's how you hold on to the information.
Give me a more specific example. Teach me something using IP.
So you can have like a closed guard armbar.
Okay.
It's like a 3-4 step system. You're gonna.
That was 5.
Yeah, exactly right.
Old school.
Yeah, exactly right. And you're just taking them through each step until you get to the end, and then you go and recreate that. And then that's how you take in the information. And the reason it's probably done that way is that's how like most schooling systems are done.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably more relevant for school. But even still, how many people come out of school not retaining any of the information they learn in school, right? Like, what do people really retain? Like, nucleus is powerhouse of the cell. That's about it, right? Whereas like the vast amount of information that you actually study and get tested on throughout your entire duration of school, from preschool all the way to high school, how much of it can you really recall off the top of your head? Very little, right? Very little. Whereas the ecological way of doing it, it's more about the environment and testing yourself within the environment so that the curiosity for the information is found a little bit more organically, right? Or maybe the solutions are found a little bit more organically, right? Rather than it being, I have all of the information, it's I have some of the information, and that little bit amount of information allows me to create a game where you can go and experience and understand through the experience the things that I've understood in the same context, right? I didn't learn half of the things I know about leg locks and arm bars from some guy just telling me it. I had to take it and go and roll and try and hit these submissions and find out when the control works, when it doesn't, right? How the brake can be applied, why rotating is stupid. Like I know that stuff because I've been in the role and I've seen it, right? And so it's creating little games, a little like microcosms of the larger macro game, and saying within the confines of just this way of playing it, you're going to find and feel and experience all the things I know. And then while you're experiencing them, I'm going to explain it back to you, and you're going to go, oh, okay, yeah.
That's why.
That's why.
So we talked about IP for armbar. Can you tell me like the eco approach to armbar maybe? That might be helpful to show contrast.
So I taught a fundamentals class, which everyone went wild for, which was an eco class on armbars. Rather than teaching all of these steps in like a rigid way of doing a armbar, we basically said, all right, we're gonna start from guard, like an open guard. You have an objective, is to isolate the elbow and get your hips between the elbow and the shoulder. Where should this foot go? Doesn't matter.
Cool.
Isolate the elbow, isolate the arm, hips between elbow and shoulder. That's it. And dude, watching white belts who really struggle with jiu-jitsu, like finding ways to like invert over the arm so they can get their hips behind it, and like, does that work? I'm like, are you in an armbar? Yeah. Yes, there you go.
Perfect.
Well, should this foot go here or here?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Are your hips behind? Are your hips in between the elbow and the shoulder? Yes. Can you apply pressure to it through the hip? Yeah, you've got an armbar. Doesn't matter, right? It will matter as they start escaping. It will matter as they start trying to change the position, but that's for a different lesson. The lesson for right now is, can you isolate the arm? Can you get your hips behind the elbow and the shoulder? And so that was an eco lesson on arm bars, and everyone got so good, like crazy good at catching arm bars without me teaching them a single technique.
Just gotta understand that first principle.
That's it.
It's like, as you're describing this, I was like, I remember lessons where people taught the arm bars as 5-step arm bar. I'm sure you can do it on somebody who's not resisting, maybe on some white belts, but you never see that at the high level. It never looks like that.
No.
But your description is like, where does the foot go? I don't know. Like so many arm bars end with like different leg configurations, so that wasn't the important part at all.
Well, the way that we did it is we just changed the position where you did it. Right, so it's guard, isolate the arm, hips behind, hips between the elbow and the shoulder. Right, now we're going to do it from mount. Now we're going to do it from the back. Now we're going to do it from here. Same principle. Isolate the arm, hips between the elbow and the shoulder. And just, people were catching wild arm bars, dude, because I gave them the creativity I gave them the tools. This is it. This is the paint. This is the brush.
Figure it out.
Figure it out. Yeah. Show me what you do with that concept. And people did wild stuff, mate.
Beautiful.
I was very impressed with my students on that day. It was very cool.
I think it's been a good controversial chat. Like, it's probably going to piss some people off, which is good.
The Brazilians are going to be
roasting us.
It's good thing I don't speak Portuguese, all right? And I'm not going to learn.
Let's finish off on one more controversial thing: gi versus no gi. A lot of people argue about this one.
It depends. I don't like the gi. I've trained in the gi. I've done better competitively in the gi, but I don't like it. The things that I don't like, I think training in the gi holds you back, right? If someone's bigger and stronger than you, they can just hold you still. And it's like, well, what's the technical solution to strip the grip if he's a 240-pound beast with a 170-pound grip?
Patience.
Yeah, just wait till he lets go. Yeah, all right. It's not technical.
Yeah.
People say there's more options, but it's like, no, you have collar chokes. That's it, right? Yeah. There's not more options. You have collar chokes. Yeah. You can still hit chokes, no-gi. You have the same submissions that just apply differently. I think for training and for getting better faster, that all the people I know who got really good really quick do way more no-gi than gi. Because in a no-gi round, because it's more scrambly, you can get out quicker. People can't just lock you in place and ruin your training. You get to see more. You get more reps in. You get to experience more.
Yeah.
And so experiencing more situations, and with that experience, being able to taking the data from it and apply it to your next role or to your next training session. So I think doing more no-gi helps you get better way faster. I know people like the gi, and I'm like, I don't dislike anyone who likes the gi. I just think, for me personally, I don't like it. And if someone is concerned only with getting as good as they can as quick as possible, I would say do less.
Sure.
Do way less gi and way more no gi, because you can apply all the things in no gi to the gi, not the other way around. Because you start relying on grips, you mess your fingers up,
transfer over.
Doesn't transfer, nowhere near as good. The other thing that I don't like is people who like the gi more, like the tradition more, and they're just dickheads. They're backstabbing, egotistical, arrogant dickheads who like people lining up and calling them professor. You don't have a degree, dude. Like, stop getting people to call you professor. All right? Like, you aren't that good. You know, you avoid rolling with good guys.
Sure.
Right? I've seen it all the time. I've watched you as a black belt have hissy fits because someone caught you, or you didn't quite get the submission you thought you had. Like, none of the discipline or things that you think come from martial arts you have. You're as arrogant as the person who walks in and goes, oh yeah, I do UFC. You're the same guy, just 10 years down the line, right? It's the people who like the gi more are like that. It's a huge culty, weird culture that just, like, it's cringy. It's cringy, you know.
As adults,
as adults,
choose this, like, ugh.
It's cringy. For kids, it's kind of like cute, right? You're watching them like, I don't know any better, right? It's like, it's funny.
Sure.
Adults who like that and enforce it,
compensating in a weird way.
Just losers, dude. They're just straight up losers, right? They're the ones who like share like the motivational thing, like discount Tom DeBlas, I call them, you know what I mean? And Tom DeBlas is a good dude. He doesn't really train in the gi at all, right? So it's like, imagine if he did. It's like Tom DeBlas if he trained in the gi. And that's it. I don't like it. The Brazilian influence on the sport is gross. I hate it. The Americans have done great things for jiu-jitsu in terms of like promoting the no-gi. It's actually more money in the sport now because of that. It's more of a spectator sport. You can without knowing the sport, you can follow it and it looks cool. Like, oh, that was fun, right? Stalling is way harder in no-gi.
It's like 5 minutes. It's like nobody wants to watch this.
No one, even gi guys.
Like,
who watched Worlds this year? You just watched the highlights at the end. Right? Oh, Tynan got DQ'd. Why? Because he turned this guy's knee that way slightly.
That's the most exciting thing.
It's like, all right, dude. The gi's cool, right? He turned his knee that way slightly and DQ'd him. Shut up, man.
But it's for self-defense. What if somebody did that in real life? You don't have an answer?
That's the other thing. Is like they say, like, oh, it's more realistic. Dude, if you grab someone's winter jacket and you pull on it the way you pull a gi, you're going to rip that guy's winter jacket, and now you're just holding a handful of material and this dude's pissed off.
Because they don't make clothes like that anymore.
Right.
H&M throwaway 1 year.
That's it, dude. So it's, but regardless of what someone's wearing, the elbow's always there, the shoulder's always there, the wrist is always there, right? The clothing isn't a constant. Hopefully the elbow's a constant, right? Hopefully the shoulder's a constant. Hopefully it's not going anywhere unless you're fighting amputees. And then, I'll have a word with you. Stop fighting amputees, bro.
They still have knees, though.
So you'll just like, banana split the amputee. but no, dude, it's I don't like it, not through like an opinion, but through just experience and observation. The people who like the gi more are less cool. They're losers. They're less fun to hang around with. They're like, oh, well, I don't understand the difference between them. It's like, why can't people just like both? And it's like, you can like both, but if you like the gi more, you're a loser. The people who like no gi more, they're way more.
They can't explain why. It's just like, I've met tons of people who train gi who just absolutely suck in no gi. Like, they just cannot transfer skill. They're so dependent. But the other way around, no gi guys
really good in the gi.
Yeah, they can figure it out, right?
Yeah. Well, did you watch me roll in the gi? I pretty much never make a contact with your gi ever.
Lapel, just no gi grips all the time.
Yeah, because it's still relevant and it still works. Right, like the people doing this with the pants, it's like it doesn't really offer as much control as you think. Tired, you can still see grip, and it's as effective. Yeah, and it's like that's it. It's just like you're burning your arms out, right? I can do, especially when I train in Costa Rica. I realized the cost of a gi training session versus a no gi training session. I could go in, do my no gi training, and I could do like 10 rounds, and I'd be good for the rest of the day. I could go in training the gi. I could do 4 rounds. And without me even being a total idiot about it, I'd be fried for the rest of the day, and it would affect my training the next day negatively. And so as soon as I cut out the gi,
more training,
well, dude, I went down from like 6 days a week to 4 days a week, just from cutting the gi out, and my progression just went.
I got you.
Massively, because I was having those rest days in between, and it was the gi was cooking me so much that it was impacting my training towards the end of the week for my no gi. Having those rest days in between, and then also not acquiring the extra fatigue from the gi training, made it so that every session I was turning up to, I was way closer to 100%. So my performance was consistently excellent. And so every session became more valuable.
Yeah.
Every session was way more valuable just based on the amount of energy that I had to make good decisions and be proactive about my training. When I was just turning up and just doing as much as I could, my progression was still okay, but it was nowhere near as fast. When I cut out the gi, that's when I seen the highest level of progression. And for the people who like the gi more, they've trained 12 years and they're still nowhere near as good as me. And it's like, just have a year without the gi, just do no gi only and see what happens. Yeah.
I think what's like refreshing is like you're questioning a lot of things that are just like traditional ritual route, and I think it's like nice to hear you challenge these things and like come away with like significant gains. So like I hope the people who watch like ask these kind of things. And I think the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys originally did this too, right? They would ask like, why are we doing it this way? Like that's why the smaller Brazilians were doing very well very quickly, but we lost that like aliveness, the self-reflection and like challenging yourself and just like going to your senpai and asking, hey, what should I do? Is like you can probably figure it out yourself. You're smart, right?
Yeah.
So good valuable information. If people want to learn more from you, I think you've got a great Instagram channel. I've learned a lot from it already. Do you want to plug it? Tell me where it is.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram. It's G Paul Coaching. Paul is in like the Christian name, Paul. I'm not as active at the moment just because I've been sort of traveling around Canada and seeing what you guys have to offer, but it's not even really looking to take people on, in all fairness. I'm looking to just sort of build, we're talking about it the other day, like a small inner circle of guys who are really looking to sort of push the meta of the sport and grow their gyms and make sure that they're being a positive impact in the community, because I'm going to be super busy.
What are you busy with?
Well, so I'm going to go down to the States and maybe training with like BMAC and see if I can get ready for like the PGF and things like that, and just maybe push myself into more like elite level grappling. Not necessarily to win, just to see if I can...
For sure. You like the experience.
Like, get the experience from it, yeah. And then also like find guys who are looking to push the sport in a positive direction and try and get in front of them so I can be a part of the positive influence in the sport, because there's so many people who are trying to hold it back to the thing that I hate. And I actually feel like the huge attrition rate that we see in Jiu-Jitsu, it's really common.
Yeah.
It's it's too difficult for people. It's like, no, dude, I think it's lame. I think you've made it boring and not fun, and they quit because of those reasons. As soon as things become boring, people quit. Yeah. Not because it's difficult. People skateboard. I know it's not because of difficulty. It's nowhere near as difficult as that. Like concrete is way less forgiving than these mats, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think it's because of that. I think it's because of the way that Jiu-Jitsu is, the culture of it. I think it scares people off just because people are dickheads in this sport. And for the people who are trying to like push it forward and progress it so that it can be introduced to people in a way where they just come in and go, dude, this is so much fun. Taking away all the things that people don't find fun is something I'm really incentivized in trying to push and grow.
That's beautiful. Let's say blue skies. What does the positive Jiu-Jitsu future look like? The ideal?
Just people coming in and you don't look up to people, right? Someone has a different skill set. You want to go up to them and you aspire to have a similar skill set, not be that person. You don't look at that person and go, oh, wow, he's amazing. No, dude, like hopefully you have the capability to do that yourself. Hopefully you have the capability to sort your diet out. Hopefully you have the capability to sort your sleep out. Hopefully you have the capability to use grappling as a catalyst for self-improvement. Hopefully you go in and you find a community and people who maybe were in a similar situation to you, and you see how it's helped them, and you want that for yourself. Yeah. Hopefully you go into a room and it's not, you stand there, you stand there, you stand. It's like an arrogance, and it's just, hey guys, we're all...
It's real.
We're all in here, we're all grappling. It's an odd thing to do, right? We're all fighting each other and then being friendly. So let's maintain the friendliness and the grappling over all of the other extras that aren't necessarily necessary for skill development.
I can definitely say, I think when you were saying like you walk into a room and you see somebody with a belt or a color, you think they're like amazing. And I think one of the funniest things for me is when people first train and we roll for the first time and I let them tap me out, like it immediately like makes them like, oh, that, like I had this thing in my mind, it would be something, and you're like, oh, okay, it's just a game. We're having fun, you're having fun, let's keep playing, right?
That's it.
It's nothing to celebrate. It's like, cool, all right.
Yeah. And
the
real takeaway is that you have something that you look forward to in your day.
100%. Yeah.
Right? How many people?
It's good escapism for everybody.
Yeah.
Like
how many people have that who don't have that?
Everybody. I don't know. Some person who does it, right? Like.
And so I think all of the other bullshit in Jiu-Jitsu takes that away because it becomes another chore.
Yeah. You start thinking about it, wasting time and energy and calories, like
all of that. Yeah, man.
Just come and play.
Come and play.
Beautiful. Anything else?
It's good, man.
Brother. Thank you so much, Glenn. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you having me,
Thanks,
dude.
man.